All right, so it's been a little while since we've done one of these office hours Q&A for Sync Academy members, but I think we are overdue. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. If you guys are in Sync Academy, I'm giving you guys exclusive access to these Q&A opportunities, but I definitely post these answer videos on my YouTube channel because I want everybody to get the benefit of the answers to the extent that I feel I can be helpful for you guys. So Ryan, first up here. Do I need to copyright my music before submitting to libraries? Very common question, a good question. Before I answer that, I want to make sure that we're very clear on what we mean by copywriting our music. First of all, nobody grants you a copyright, okay? You generate and create the copyright yourself because you've authored a piece of intellectual property. So once you have put your musical idea in a tangible medium, meaning basically an MP3, a WAV file in your session, wrote it down on a piece of paper, maybe sung it into a phone, there's an objective piece of evidence that shows you had a creative idea, you put it somewhere, granted that it's not obviously infringing upon somebody else's copyright, then you already got the copyright. I think what you're asking about is sending your music and registering your tracks with the Library of Congress to get the sort of official receipt from the government that say, yes, you have copyrighted your music, right? No, you definitely don't need to do that. In fact, I would discourage you from doing that only because most libraries are going to want to handle that on their own. Yes, a lot of libraries are going to ask for you to transfer your rights over to them, your copyrights over to their company to get exclusive access to distribute through them. We've had many videos on this channel before. I'll actually link below if you missed that last one, if you're kind of really freaked out about that and that sounds like something you would never want to do. I totally get it. I'm not trying to tell you you should do it or not do it, but it is a very common sort of ask in this industry, and there's a really good reason for it. It's not about companies being greedy or horrible. It's about them actually trying to help get you and them many more placements. So I don't think it's a horrible thing to be participating in, but it is a fact of our industry. So no, you don't need to send it off to your Library of Congress. Let the library usually handle that as they see fit. Your job is really to do your due diligence. Make sure your tracks are really registered with the PRO that you're associated with. Okay, so also the library is going to handle that, but there could be errors, mistakes, missing registrations, and if your track is not registered with a PRO and you get a placement, you're not getting royalties because nobody knows who to send those royalties to, right? So you just got to make sure that you're logging in and making sure that your tracks are showing up to you as if you're the 100% writer, as the sole writer on your tracks, okay? Trevor, would you please speak in detail as to how licensed and placed production music is tracked by PROs and paid to producers? Yeah, it's a pretty simple process, but it's full of errors and issues and problems. So it comes down to cue sheets, right? So let's say that there's a reality TV show company and they're producing a reality show. Well, they've got obviously editors that are editing the pieces together. They got a producer, maybe they got a director. They've got all these kind of executives that are sort of and professionals that are putting their piece of content together. They're required, granted that they're using music in their production and they're going to put it on the air, they are required to turn in cue sheets to the PROs, ASCAP, BMI, etc., right? So what those cue sheets state is they state, here's the show, here's the episode, and then here's a list of all the tracks that we have essentially used in this particular episode. And alongside of that is a lot of the metadata that's associated with those tracks to help identify who the composer is, who the publisher is, who the sort of royalties are owed out to, okay? Those cue sheets get turned into the PROs. The PROs then process all of that. That's why it takes a long time. There's a lot of cue sheets and a lot of data essentially to go through. And then essentially what they do is they have secret formulas. We don't really know exactly what the algorithm is. We do know that there are certain variables that determine how much we get paid in terms of how the ratings are. Is it network versus cable? How is the music used? Is it really far in the background? Is it more prominent? Is it like featured? Is it being performed by an artist on screen? You'll get paid a lot more for that. Is it coming from the speakers at a dance club in the scene? You get paid a little bit more for that as well. So there's a variety of how long the track was placed. All these kind of variables basically tune into some formula, which again, none of these PROs make public to us, unfortunately, but that's what it is. And then they essentially take what they have in their overall pie, right, minus whatever they take for their, operations, and they essentially divvy out their quarterly royalties to each one of these publishers and writers, composers basically, based on the available funds that they have, also keeping in mind this secret algorithm they use, okay? So that's essentially how we're getting paid. The problems are obvious. What if cue sheets don't get turned in? That definitely happens. It's happened in my career many times. What happens if the wrong track is labeled on a cue sheet? That definitely happens. What if the wrong composer is named? What if the wrong track title is named? What if, every other track except for yours gets listed in the cue sheet and it's just like you don't get paid? This happens a lot, right? And it's because these are human beings in charge of this. It's not an automatic system just picking up and detecting music and basically paying out. Some people have said like, well, why can't they just use that sort of music detection system where you have like the sort of audio fingerprinting or watermarking? I agree. I think some of that technology should be infused into how PROs sort of calculate things. But the problem is, I have definitely learned a lot more about that as I've been launching my Sync Match app. It's not a perfect technology, and in fact, there are misses quite a bit where it says that track we just heard is this song, and you play the original song and you play what it heard on the placement, you go, nope, that's definitely not it. So it's not perfect, and so I think that's why a lot of these PROs cannot 100% just blindly rely on a technology like that to just make sure that everybody's getting paid what they should be. There still needs to be some human oversight into that. And how do you have a human or a group of humans consistently compare, hundreds, millions of placements every single quarter, however many that they're processing every single quarter. So for now, the best game in town is these cue sheets, which it sucks, but it's what we got right now. So fingers crossed, we'll have new technologies, maybe decentralized blockchain technologies in the future that can help us. But, until that comes, this is basically how things work out. And then, of course, to answer the question, those PROs then send out your percentage, your share, and they give you a sort of a statement of all of the placements based on those cue sheets that are showing up for your name, okay? Yulia, do you think it's time to pull out all the music, including the demo, representing yourself as a composer from Spotify due to their new terms and conditions? I am not familiar with the new terms and conditions, Yulia, so sorry, I don't really have an opinion on that. Maybe it has something to do with AI or training off your music, or I have no idea. So you got to make your own decision on that one. Sorry, I can't really help you. I don't have music through Spotify. I've never really released music that way. Maybe some of my music is there just because of the libraries I've worked with and they've released it there, but that's all out of my control at this point, so I don't really have an opinion on that. So sorry, can't help you on that one. Kirkland, I'm making the most out of Sync Match. When I have an email generated, I always alter it a little bit. Smart, you guys should be doing that. Before I submit it to the libraries, I submit to the same select 4 libraries. Okay. Number 1, do you think the music supervisors may notice any similarities in some of the emails? Possibly, but if you're altering it and you're adding a little bit of personalization to it, you're adding a little bit of a sentence or two about who this person is and how you really want to serve their needs, chances are less that you're actually being able to, do that. But it is a chance for sure. So I think the more you can customize your email, the better, because these are the auto-generating email function on Sync Match is not meant to be a click a button, send an email off. That's almost the fastest way to get lost in spam or get rejected. But just to get you started, because it can be a monumental, overwhelming, what's the first sentence, right? Like, how do you, it's that blank page, it's just that anxiety. What do you even get started with? That's what that auto generation tool is for. It just gets you started. And you should definitely, as you've been doing, customize it to a way and also use the kind of language you would potentially use. Don't just default to whatever this AI generated text says, because it's probably a little bit robotic and stiff sounding. So infuse your personality into it. So the more that you're customizing it, the less chances it'll be sort of recognized by multiple people as some sort of a copy paste thing, right? And he says, I always attach a SoundCloud link to my emails for that particular track. Should I keep doing that? I would say stop the SoundCloud stuff. SoundCloud is definitely the lowest option I would ever recommend. The last option, I should say. It's compressing music. It has ads that it might be injecting in between like a track or two on a playlist that you're sending to people. Just do Dropbox. If you're going to do something that's just a link to a streaming group of tracks, use Dropbox. If not, Disco, really, really popular choice. Realcrafter, those are popular choices. SoundCloud and Google Drive are the last two that I would recommend. Google Drive because it takes a long time to actually stream the track. You can click play and it just sits there for like 10, 20 seconds before it plays, and you also don't see the waveform. I think people really do like to see a waveform these days as they're listening to music, so Google Drive just doesn't give you that, and Dropbox does. So I would just say knock the SoundCloud thing off. I wouldn't do that anymore. So yes, creating a link to whatever music though you're sending is a very, very smart idea. Phil, given the speed at which AI is advancing, is it realistic to think this kind of work will still be done by humans in the next 5 years or more? That's the $1 million question, Phil. That is why I have devoted a good amount of my time in the last 2 years getting very curious about AI and especially how it's going to potentially affect us in the sync licensing world. As of to date, there's only been two situations I've noticed where AI has really come in and disrupted or potentially affected what we're doing. One is that Red Lobster campaign a year ago, where Red Lobster essentially released this kind of joke mixtape thing where it was obviously AI generated music, didn't really get a warm reception. I wouldn't consider it a very successful campaign. The only reason it got a lot of attention is because it was one of the first corporate clients and Red Lobster was in trouble. But they used AI music to essentially try to promote their brand. And of course, that's why it got attention, because it was AI music. It wasn't because everybody was suddenly interested in Red Lobster's meals again. So that was one. I haven't heard of that happening since then. And another was essentially a fairly major publisher in our industry that did release an album. I'm not going to give their details or who they are, because I definitely don't want to embarrass them, because they eventually caught on to this and fixed it. But there was a pretty major publisher that did release an album that when you clicked on it and hit play, it was I think it was a Suno generated album, because it had different sounding singers and it definitely had that very kind of glossy, like hollow sound that a lot of those models tend to have. And it just you could just tell if you follow this industry and you follow these models, you can kind of just hear it, right? It has a certain quality. I think it was Suno. And this particular publisher was notified about it. I don't know how they didn't know about it. Maybe it just sort of got uploaded and there was no quality control. But that album has been taken down. Okay, so this happened a few months back. So hopefully that was kind of a wake-up call to them, and I hope other libraries, especially if any of you guys are watching this channel and this video, hopefully you guys are taking some precautions to try to detect AI-generated music before it gets uploaded to you. In terms of where we're going to be in the next 5 years, still couldn't tell you. My hunch right now is that we are certainly hitting a wall in terms of the scaling effect. The idea we had and what we were seeing with real results was that if you just fed these models, music models included, tons and tons and tons of data and threw a bunch of compute at it, just basically linked up a whole bunch of GPUs, you could get exponentially much better results by just keep doing that. Just throw more compute and more data into these things, which basically meant more money, and you would just get these massive increases in quality of output and capabilities. I'm sort of feeling and sensing the wall we've hit with that, and the more incremental improvements where it's like, yeah, these models are not, you guys remember from Google Music LM to Suno, I mean, that is exponential. It sounded like not even music, basically 8-bit, 1980s Atari music, to most people could be fooled by this stuff already, right? That's where we just went in a couple of years. I don't see these massive jumps beyond that at this point, right? I'm seeing these little incremental and, we added this feature and this and that. So it's much more incremental now. It's not kind of like sort of, scaling at this exponential rate that's basically hard to keep up with. So what's going to happen? Will there be another breakthrough that pushes us through? I have no idea. I think obviously it will continue to get better. I'm not in denial about that. But how much of sync licensing will be replaced by AI generative music? It still comes down to the copyrights. Will this music be able to be eligible for copyrights? It comes down to, will there be an incentive for people to change their current workflow in terms of, editors and people that are already sourcing music from production music libraries to go, you know what, I'm just going to take it from this AI company now, or I'm going to hire somebody to come in and prompt basically a whole library that we know the kind of music that we need. One of the sort of, I think it's a misstep, and I think it's a miscalculation that some people will say, well, these editors that are currently using music, they don't want to turn into prompt engineers, right? That's asking them to become experts at something new, to prompt in exactly, they won't be able to describe the music. They just want to be able to click on a track and take it. I agree. That's certainly true. But all it would require for maybe one of these production companies or somebody who's sourcing music for their TV shows is to hire like some kid for basically a week, right? You hire some kid who knows how to prompt these models very well. And you say, listen, kid, this is the kind of music that we place. Listen to all this kind of stuff. You extract what you think we would need in terms of prompting. And I want you to go prompt using this AI model that we're paying, go prompt us 300,000 tracks in exactly these styles. And then when you need more music, you go hire that kid on an independent contractor basis and he goes and prompts more, right? I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not rooting for that, but I don't see that as a big barrier to this generative music to be able to be used in place of AI music, or sorry, in place of human music. Regardless of wherever that goes, I still think there will always be the sort of premium organic section where there will be clients that do want to primarily and only use human made music for obvious reasons. So I would say just for you guys that are watching this, focus on increasing your talents, increasing your skills, getting your music more lifelike, more human like, adding more live instruments, maybe more vocals if you possibly can, and become such an unstoppable force that you're essentially undeniable and you're irreplaceable. So just focus on what you can do. Technology is going to do it. It's going to do. AI is going to do what it's going to do. So I wish I could tell you yes or no, but I just don't think anybody's got any confirmation at this point of where things are going. All right, Matthew. I know the majority of placements are usually in the mood of positive and empowerment, etc., mid to up tempo. I also try to compose other moods such as sad, melancholy. What ratio do you believe would be wise to produce happy to sad, as to cover a range of the emotional spectrum, so I can increase my odds of vast variety of placements? Hope that makes sense. Yeah, totally makes sense. And, the sort of standard answer I could give you it would be you probably want to do an 80-20, right? You probably want to keep 80% of your catalog and 80% of the albums you produce in a year in the upbeat, energetic. It doesn't necessarily mean to be positive. You have positive empowerment, but tense and dark and maybe even combative. Those are all also very, very licensable. So it doesn't have to be always sunshine and roses and wow, everything's going to be amazing. There can be a lot of darkness and tension and sort of aggravation and anger that's also in there in that mid to up tempo range. So there's a lot more you can do in that sort of, I would just say, higher energy. That's probably the better way to kind of encapsulate all of that. It's just a little bit more of a higher energy, as opposed to sad, slower, dramatic, depressing ballads, romantic stuff, that kind of thing. That's a little bit more in the lower energy field. I would just call it that in whatever style of music you're going. I would say 80% keep it up here, moving forward, especially in the tempo category, and dip your toes a little bit, 20% or so, into the slower categories. Because if you're watching on Sync Match and you're definitely following along with what you're seeing there with the trends, I think you'll see that kind of bear out, that like powerful and engaging and even tension, even, it doesn't have to be all like positive emotions, but definitely more energetic emotions and styles are certainly taking the vast majority of the placements, which is what I've seen in my entire career when I was really, really active, and it's just still continuing on. So 80-20, that would be my advice for that one. Ryan, where my brain is unsure of most is how long do tracks need to be for library submissions? For feature films, I can see 2.5 to 3.5 minutes per track. But what's the track length guidelines for commercials and such? Because I can't see a commercial track being as long as a feature film. Do you have guidelines that we should follow for our track length for different uses? I'm finding it hard to find confidence in starting now when I'm not sure what I'm shooting for lengthwise. Great question, Ryan. And what I've said traditionally is 2 to 3 minutes is about where you should be shooting for most library tracks. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule. There are some libraries that if they want tension music that's, kind of in the background of a lot of reality shows or drama shows, a minute and a half is all they really need. Like, that you can actually keep it pretty concise and short. It doesn't need to have this extended length. There are other companies where if you're making big, vast, huge, epic trailer pieces, they're okay with it being 3.5 minutes or something like that. I would definitely, there would have to be an exceptional rule for why you would go beyond 3.5 minutes for anything. Okay, so I would almost make that as a hard and fast rule. 3 to 3.5 should be the max you ever make your length. But what you don't have to do is guess anymore. And this is why I know that I'm becoming repetitive and constantly, promoting Sync Match. But the reason why I created this exact app is to answer these questions where, we're kind of in the dark. Does it need to be this long, that long? How should it structure? What should a mood be? What kinds of placements and what types of content would it be best for? These are all great questions, but none of them need to be unanswered anymore. So if you're using Sync Match, you can basically go look up your particular style of music, your genre, your moods that you really focus on, and go click on the actual Spotify link, and it'll tell you right there, oh, this track is 145. And actually, it'll show you usually the entire album, where it came from. And you can just look at that entire album. Oh, they're all between a minute and a half and 2.5. There's your answer. If you're going to go for this direction, you want to go for this style, this mood, maybe even to that exact library that supplied those tracks, which you'll get the contact information and the link right there on the app. That's all right there for you. So you don't have to guess and wonder and think, because there are going to be different answers for different styles of music, of course. But with Sync Match, you are opening the curtain to know exactly what gets placed and how long those tracks are and how they're structured and what instruments they are. How loud are they? How many tracks are on an album that got released by that library rather. So with this information now that you guys are hopefully using and getting access to, all of these questions are essentially answered now. It's just a matter of you clicking a couple of buttons, going into the app, and finding your answer. That's really what it comes down to now. That's why I've definitely said from the beginning and continue to believe that this app is a game changer, because up until now, you could click on the TV, you could turn on streaming, you can kind of like, hear a couple of tracks, but you don't know who's supplying it. You definitely don't know how long the original track was, especially like you're watching these commercials, which we do obviously show you guys. If you click on the video snippet now, you can watch the commercial that this track that you're interested in got placed in. So you can see how it was used, how long the placement actually was. And almost every single time, they're going to cut up your track and make it fit the spot. So even if you're submitting, even a minute and a half tracks, chances are it's going to be so Frankensteined up that it'll be 5 seconds from the intro, 3 seconds from this middle part, maybe the full chorus, and then out. But that's the beauty of production music, is we're giving them these versatile options for them to take our music and chop it up and make it customized for whatever their spot is or show. So that's what's really cool, and the value that we basically are adding for them is that sort of versatility and those options. So hopefully that helps. So thank you guys so much. Great questions this time. We'll definitely do this again. I hope you guys found this useful. And until we do this again, keep productive, stay healthy, and stay hopefully very, very motivated in your sync licensing career.